This week's episode is with Bree and Sabrina. Now, Sabrina is one of my doula partners and Bree was one of her clients. And she walks us through a very interesting fertility journey that ended with IVF and then getting pregnant right at the onset of COVID and the hospital shutting down a week after she signed a contract with a doula. So then she walks us through birthing in COVID virtually with a doula. It's a really cool, interesting story. There is a moment in it that not even I, after 18 years, could have guessed happened. I totally freaked out. You got to hear it. All right, let's get to it. What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does a day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Heids. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them and you deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings. And of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this birth story family. Okay, just a little something before we get started today, and that is, what happens if you don't take Birth Story Academy? So let's say you're pregnant. That's why you're listening to the Birth Story podcast and you're preparing for a hospital birth that's upcoming. And of course, this podcast gives you tons of free information, right? But do you really understand the stages of labor? How to know when you're in labor? What if you have to have an induction? What about a cesarean section? What about all of the decisions that you have to make once you get to the hospital? So you get there and then they put you in triage. Birth Story Academy walks you through all the things that happen, like that rapid fire with monitoring and blood work and questions and IV ports. And do you want an epidural? I don't know. Do you? In Birth Story Academy, we literally break down all of those decisions. Pros, cons, risks, benefits, intuition. And we get into it. We make birth plans, we do birth visions, we listen to birth affirmations and parenting affirmations. And at the end of it, you know exactly what's going to happen when you go into labor and when you get to the hospital. What's going to happen after you give birth, newborn care preferences, how to take care of your baby. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're not in Birth Story Academy, what's your plan, right? I want to be your teacher. I want you to come join me in Birth Story Academy and let me walk you through all of the decisions that you have to make if you're having a hospital birth and how to have body autonomy and how to have informed consent and informed refusal. I'm going to teach you and your partner, if you have one, everything that you need to know about birthing in a hospital so that you can walk in that door with some swagger, with some confidence, wash that anxiety away because you learned everything you needed to learn in Birth Story Academy and you are ready to crush that birth, right? Okay, let's do it. And let's get to this episode. Hey, Bree. Hey, Sabrina. Welcome to the Birth Story podcast. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So today is Bree and her doula, Sabrina.
Hello.
If you guys listen to the podcast, you know that Sabrina has helped out a little bit, and she's one of Colin and I's doula partners in Charlotte, North Carolina. So Sabrina's cry, is in nursing school and studying to be a midwife. So I fear the doula world is losing you for a little bit.
It is. But I will always help out when needed.
Yes. And the world is gaining a great new midwife. So.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully in 5 years.
It's never too late, you guys. Well, Bree, we are here to talk about your COVID birth stories. So we're going to start with your first, which was like the beginning of COVID, and doulas weren't allowed. Okay. So we're going to talk to you and Sabrina about how you navigated that. So before we get started, share with us a little bit about your journey to pregnancy, because I've heard from Sabrina there was a fertility story.
Yes. So my husband and I did the whole typical, got married, waited a year, wanted to, do some things, and then started trying. I actually got pregnant right off the bat, but then quickly had our first miscarriage. And then unfortunately had 2 more within the next, I guess probably about 9 months. So we had 3 miscarriages in 9 months, and nobody could really tell us what was going on. So it was suggested that we do IVF for the genetic testing part of it, because they thought maybe something was genetic that was causing our miscarriages, because every other test that we had on both sides, for him and for myself, they were all negative. Everything was fine. So went through IVF, vitro fertilization, took 2 egg retrievals and 4 embryo transfers to get us a pregnancy that stuck around. We had 2 more miscarriages within those, and then 1 transfer that just did not take.
Wow. So, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It was a lot.
So the first 3 miscarriages in 9 months. So you were getting pregnant like very easily and back to back. And I'm assuming you were miscarrying pretty early on, or any of them after 12 weeks?
No, all pretty early on. The first one was about 9 weeks. And honestly, with that one, I was very upset, but it was kind of like, I work in the medical profession as well. So it was kind of like one of those things I was like, okay, this happens. It unfortunately is part of life sometimes. We're going to move on. But then the second one happened. And then the third one happened. And with the third one, I had to have a D&E surgery to help me pass the baby, which was pretty horrible.
Say something right there too, because of what's happening right now with Roe v. Wade. Just to bring light to this situation. Did anyone let you know in advance that you would be consenting to an abortion?
So actually that day of the surgery, we were already at the fertility clinic when this one happened. And our doctor had kind of prepared us for it. I had taken the medicine, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head now, to try to medically pass the embryo. Say it one more time.
Cytotec?
Maybe. I don't know. I thought it started with the M.
Misoprostol is like the generic, same drug.
Yeah.
Generic brand name.
Right. So that did not work. And then I remember, the day of the surgery, the nurse at the surgery center was explaining it to me. She said, this is an elective abortion. And I was like, well, like it definitely kind of took me by surprise a little bit. So it definitely makes me think about it right now.
Mm-hmm. It is common, and it happened to me, that they did not tell me it was an abortion. They said, sign this paper for the procedure. And I read it, and it said, no, you gave me the wrong paper. I'm not having an abortion. I even said the words, I wanted this baby. And they said, no, you're having an abortion medically.
Yeah.
So read your papers.
Yeah. Even looking later at my medical chart with my miscarriages, it says spontaneous abortion, which is, it's hard to see for sure.
It is. And I'm sorry to bring that up, like kind of on the spot with you, Bree. It's just everything that's going on in like the news and the Supreme Court and stuff right now. And I just think that there's a lack of education on all of the things that an abortion could mean. And a D&C, which is done earlier, or D&E, which is done later, those are abortions. And so, I think it gets lost in literature sometimes. and in bills.
Absolutely.
Sometimes not everyone is able to miscarry at home, and some people don't want to miscarry at home. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to educate on the fact that that is something you need to take into consideration, that you would need to consent for an abortion if you were getting this procedure done. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. So
we could talk about that for
so
whole other podcast.
Exactly. So your first two, you miscarried at home.
So the second one, we actually didn't know we were pregnant. We had gone back to the doctor to see why we weren't getting pregnant again, because I was ovulating, all of that. And I was actually actively miscarrying when we were going back to the doctor. So yes, both the first two at home.
Okay. Woo, not easy story, Brittany. Yeah. How old are you?
I am 37 now.
Okay, so you were 34-ish? 30?
Yes.
Okay.
30. So we got married when I was 31, started trying 32, and then took 3 years for us to have a baby.
Sabrina, do you know if it's common to go to fertility that quickly with 3 losses? Because I know some clinics will say you have to wait a whole year but was it the 3rd loss that they were like, okay, this seems to be a pattern?
I think that once it's a pattern in a set year, because your body obviously is getting pregnant. So the statistic is 1 in 4 have a miscarriage. So if she has 3 in a row, then something's going on medically that we need to then figure out why. So the year wait for infertility is if you have 1 miscarriage and you keep trying and you don't get pregnant. But I think if you get pregnant pretty easily and the babies are not staying, then that is where they speed up the fertility journey.
Okay. So Bree, prior to this, had it even crossed your mind that you may have to go to fertility to have a baby?
No. And I can remember asking my gynecologist, right after we got married, I'm over 30. Is there anything I need to be aware of? Is there anything I should be looking at? And she had told me, there's nothing in your history that should suggest anything. My sister had struggled with her first, but she had low ovarian reserve, which I do not have. So it's kind of in the back of my mind a little bit that maybe something could come up, but no, it never, even with the first miscarriage, I didn't think that it was going to be a problem after that.
When did you have a conversation, or did you at all, about just continuing on and not going to IVF? Or were you like, no, we want to be really proactive? And I mean, it's expensive. So I'm trying to figure out, did you have insurance that covered it? Did it ever cross your mind to just keep going? Or were you like, that was just too tragic and we can't put my body through that anymore? Where was your headspace in making those decisions?
So I am super fortunate that where I work has IVF benefits. So that was definitely a great thing for us. The other thing is my gynecologist at the time, she did not go by that 1 year rule. She said 6 months she's like, that's long enough when you're actively trying, when you're tracking your ovulation, when you're, you've had, like Sabrina said, when you've had these pregnancies before. She was like, this is enough. And we did. So after the second one was actually when we started trying to book with the fertility clinic and everything. And we were already there when we got pregnant the 3rd time. So we did keep actively trying, even when we were first started going to the fertility clinic. But after that, the 3rd loss was when I was like, okay, well, I can't do this again. I can't have another miscarriage so close together. Let's pump the brakes and figure out what's going on here.
Okay. So you mentioned you had a D&E. Did they send the fetus away for testing?
They did not, which that was our choice.
Okay.
And part of me thinks maybe we should have done it. But still, at that time, like I said, we were kind of already starting the fertility process. So I figured if something's going on, we're gonna figure it out.
Figure it out.
So.
Okay. So in your IVF journey, you guys find out that essentially you are good and your husband's good, as in unexplained, I'm going to air quote, infertility. I mean, when you're getting pregnant, you're pretty fertile. So did they do any exploratory surgeries or kind of like look for, fibroids or the lining of your uterus? Like, did they just test you for everything before they implanted?
Right. So tested for all the things. I don't have fibroids. I don't have endometriosis, which is a common, thing for people to have when they're struggling. I don't have PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. I don't have that. They tested the lining of my uterus, did all the things. I don't even know how many ultrasounds I've had, but just nothing was showing up. Actually, with our fourth transfer, that actually was the one that stuck. That was the one that did show a little bit of problems with my lining. And they told us that the chances of it working were down to 30%. So that was the one that kind of had the least likelihood of working. And that's the one that did work. So
wow,
you just never know.
So sperm was fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So sperm was fine. You were fine. So when they did the egg retrieval, how many eggs did you get?
Oh gosh. The first time around, I don't even remember. I think 11 or 12.
Okay.
And we only ended up getting one embryo from that.
Okay.
And they did send it away for genetic testing, and it did end up being genetically abnormal, but it was something random. It wasn't like something that would show why we were having miscarriages.
Okay.
And then changed up the medicines for the second egg retrieval. And then we got 20 eggs, I believe, the second time. Ended up with 6 embryos, which were all genetically quote unquote normal. So, and then, the fourth one is what gave us our first daughter. And we have 2 more on ice.
So the first 3, technically you're pregnant, right? When they put the embryo up there and you're technically pregnant, but I know sometimes it doesn't implant and that kind of thing. So did any of them stay for a period of time, or did they all 3 immediately not stay?
So 2 of them stayed for a very short period of time. So technically to have a positive pregnancy test even after the medicines were out of my system.
Okay.
Because if you test too early, you can get a positive pregnancy test, but it's from the medications. So those still would have been, though, under the medical definitions, considered a chemical pregnancy. So you get that positive test, but then it's quickly not positive anymore. And then the third one just didn't stick at all.
Okay. Okay. So the fourth time.
Yes.
Girl, you have some endurance, fertility endurance over here. Tell us about how you found out you were pregnant. This one was here to stay.
So we had the fourth transfer in early December, and all of the others, we had waited till we went to the doctor to have the blood test to see whether we were pregnant or not. And this time I was just like, we're testing at home. We're doing this. So, took the test and it was positive, of course. So, but I was still, we've been there, done this before. So tested a few days in a row and it was happening. And we went into the clinic and, met with our doctor who we dearly love. And she's been there for us. She listens to us. She, she was amazing, still is amazing, she confirmed it. And, we had several ultrasounds in a row, which were, I am not really a super emotional person, but that first heartbeat was just all kinds of tears for me, tears for my husband. It was amazing. So it was right before Christmas. So it was just
And that's 2019, right? Christmas 2019.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. Everybody
Right?
knows what's coming.
Bree, had you ever heard a heartbeat before?
No. I had not.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it was, I could like tear up thinking about it right now.
Mhm.
It was amazing. I remember asking the ultrasound tech like 3 times, can you go back to the heartbeat? Can you go back to the heartbeat? Can I hear that again? So
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Bree, I had a Doppler and I listen to that baby's heartbeat I know it's not safe, y'all. I'm not endorsing this on the podcast because the FDA says not to do this, but I bought a Doppler and I listen to that baby's heartbeat every day. Both
100%. Yep. So did I.
I'd be like, there's not a lot of movement today. Choo, choo, choo,
yep.
you know?
100%. Yes.
So,
100%.
if you are one of those crazy people that gets a Doppler and tries to listen to the, a lot of times you can't hear the heartbeat on the belly until after about 10, 12, 14 weeks sometimes. So
right.
If you are listening to this podcast and you're like, oh, I do have a Doppler, just don't freak out. Just keep it in mind. You may not catch that heartbeat, until a little bit into your second trimester. So, all right. So now you're pregnant. That was a long journey. And now at some point you have to start thinking about, oh my gosh, like we've been spending all this time trying to get pregnant, but now I'm pregnant. I need to like change the focus to parenting, birth, feeding, the brain switches over at some point. So did you we know Sabrina's on as your doula, but like at some point were you like, hey, I think we should have a doula? Like, how did that go down?
It's so funny you say that because it was literally like one day at the beginning of March, we were like, oh, we're really going to have this baby. Like we need to start thinking about what we're going to do to prepare. And I had always wanted to have an unmedicated birth. It was just something that I was super interested in. My mom had unmedicated birth with all 4 of us. I had friends that have had medicated and unmedicated and always said they'd go the unmedicated route again. And I just wanted to be as prepared as I could be. And I knew that having a doula would help me in that process, help me be more prepared. So in March, we started doing some Googling, looking up doulas, doing some interviewing, and that's how we met Sabrina.
Awesome. Okay, so this is March 2020.
Yeah.
So you're interviewing doulas right at the beginning of like the shutdown, right?
Right.
So like on your interview with Sabrina, I'm going to bring you on now. Like Sabrina, let's go back to March 2020 as doulas. It was scary to take on interviews even. Because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to support a birthing person, right? So tell me about like where your mindset was, Sabrina, as a doula, like with even taking an interview, not knowing, like what did those conversations look like for you and Bree?
Why do you want a doula? When I was interviewing clients, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just like a social thing to do, because knowing it was a complicated time in our country and hospital policies, it was just more complicated to support a person. So like, what is your long-term goal? If you want an unmedicated birth, then you're probably going to need a doula during this time frame. But if you're getting a doula because your friend had a doula and you think it's a good idea, I might have said, I don't know if I can support you to where you'll feel the benefit of it based on your birth goals. Does that make sense, Heidi?
Yeah, it does. I remember being in a similar place because as entrepreneurs, Bree, and business owners, we had to make a decision also. Do we shut down with the hospitals and collect unemployment? Or do we continue to take clients on and try to serve them as best as we can virtually. It was a really hard decision on whether or not to continue to keep your business open. I know lots of businesses throughout the country felt that, but you guys are like literally like meeting in March at like the very beginning of these conversations. Sabrina, had the hospitals shut down yet when you met Bree?
No.
Okay.
I think she signed the contract. I was working with a partner at the time, and I think she signed our contract a week before the hospitals shut down.
Wow.
And Bree works in one of the main hospitals, or worked at the time in one of the main hospitals here. So she like knew what was going on before the news did. And she would text us, so like things are a little crazy. And I just remember as it progressed and then the lockdown happened, we both were like, oh, it's only going to be 6 weeks. I'll be able to be with you. Like we kept saying, there's no way I'm not going to be able to be with you in August. Like it's just not going to happen. I will be with you.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing, I was only with her at her house.
So let's get into it. From March until August, Bree, what did that planning and preparation look like with a doula?
So, we had a couple kind of pre-meetings, I guess, still. One of them, I think, was over Zoom. And then we did meet in person as well. And I was, reading all these books, and I did start to take a natural birthing class that ended up to be a little too natural for me, because I knew I did want to birth in the hospital. That's where I felt safe. This one was just a little too over the top for me, but Sabrina was always available. Well, I don't even know how much we texted back and forth, just kind of with questions, with, ideas, with prep work as far as what me and my husband, Andrew, should be doing to get ready. I'm definitely a person that wants to be prepared and wants to feel like they're ready. So I don't know. It was just like, I just felt like each week, like I was getting like more and more prepared, and I was going to be able to do this. And it was, going to go right by the book. Everything was going to go exactly how I had read it. And that was not the case.
And she was one of my most prepared clients. Like at our final prenatal, like she had the tools. Like, here's my rolling pin I'm going to bring. Here are my tennis balls I'm going to bring. Should I buy this rebozo? And Andrew, her husband, was like, show me all of the moves that I will need to do so we can practice them at home. Like focused, like a coach in the game. Like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a touchdown, all of the things. But we also had a conversation because one of the hospital systems opened up a vendor program for doulas to be allowed back in. And they told us June, I think 20th, Heidi.
Yeah, it was
2020.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't tell us what actual day we would be allowed back in, but they said, sign up and it will be soon. And Bree was not in that hospital system. So we had a couple conversations of, I can't tell you what date they're going to let me there, but do you want to switch practices to another hospital system in the chance that it's open by the time you have the baby? And I think on both of our ends, and Bree, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was a hard decision because she was close with her practice. And we kept saying, surely the hospitals won't still be shut down.
Right. And the first time I delivered at the hospital I worked at, and, like I said before, it was where I was comfortable. It's where I felt safe leading up to it. Like Sabrina said, I really liked the practice I was at that time. And yeah, we still, even in June, never thought that it would still be shut down in August. I don't think anybody thought that.
Yep.
So.
And they opened in December, this particular hospital system, for what, like 2 days, and then everyone got COVID and then they shut down again, and for several more months. And then it wasn't until it was 2021, right? Like spring 2021 that they reopened after.
Yeah. May 2021.
Yeah. Cause they had opened in December for like literally a couple days and then shut down again. So
it was still, even when I was pregnant with my second, it was still that
still shut
weren't
down.
allowed. Yep.
Well, Bree, I'm going to shameless plug over here, but the reason that I created Birth Story Academy, my like online childbirth education course during the pandemic, was for exactly what you just said. Like, Sabrina knows, like, you know, half of our clients go unmedicated. The other half of our clients are planning their epidural. You know, some are wait and see attitudes, kind of to see how it unfolds. But I created a course that was all hospital based, like policies, procedures, like triage, the stages of labor, because I think I wear that hat pretty well of like a little bit crunchy and a little bit evidence-based and a little bit crunchy and a little bit, or probably a lot more evidence-based and a little bit crunchy. So Birth Story Academy, Bree, would have been a great fit for you. It wasn't out when you were pregnant, but like for anyone who's listening right now, that's like you're birthing in a hospital, but that you're interested in a medicated or unmedicated birth, but you want a little bit of that, a little crunchy, hippie, you know, women's rights, like advocate, like I've got a voice, partnered with like, I really like my providers and I feel safe in a hospital. And so that's where I'm delivering. Then Birth Story Academy is a really good option for people. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, cause I hear so often, well, I tried to take this unmedicated course and it was just so like, you know, anti everything.
I think that's funny too, because when I met Sabrina, that's probably like one of the first things I said is I'm not crunchy. I want to birth in a hospital, because I did, while I knew a doula could be a great support person for me, I did kind of have this image in my head that I'm more like, oh, they're going to try to talk me into a home birth and like all of these things. And while I wanted to go unmedicated, it wasn't the end all be all, you know? So I definitely tried to make it clear that I'm not crunchy.
Yeah, we can debunk some of those myths, right? Like there are myths out there that like a doula equals an unmedicated birth. Nope. You can plan your epidural, and a doula provides tons of value. If you even knew the positions that we can put you in with an epidural that like you can't even imagine. The low cesarean section rates, because doulas are moving your pelvis and opening you, you know, even if you can't feel your toes. We're still helping you get your babies down and out. Now I'm curious to see what happened, you know? Okay, so let's get into the birth. How did you know you were in labor? And like, spoiler, I know that you went into spontaneous labor. So Bree, what gestation were you, and how did you kind of know like, ooh, I think this is it?
So went to my 39-week appointment. Hadn't had any signs of labor up until then. I think I was like 1 centimeter forever, and actually had a kind of a rough appointment there. The doctor that I saw that day stripped my membranes without asking me, which I was definitely not happy about.
I'm having a physical reaction, y'all.
Yes. So it wasn't something that I was against at the moment, but I didn't want it, you know, before I needed it.
And what I love, after the fact, Bree wrote a letter to the hospital. So doulas can complain all day long that informed consent and the provider can't do this without your permission. But many of our clients will be like, well, it's over. It can't change anything. And I love that Bree let the hospital system know this happened to me. I was not okay with it.
Yeah. So Bree, this happened to me. I was like 42 plus weeks pregnant when this happened. But, you know, the doctor went to do a vaginal exam and then was like, I just helped you out a little bit. You should be in like labor tonight, and swept your membranes. And I was like, what? Ah! You know, I like start crying in the parking lot, like totally freaked out. But I'm a doula and I practice with my clients. You know, if you're going to get a vaginal exam, make sure to say in advance, do not strip my membranes. But then you get in the room and you freeze, you forget everything, right? Like this is a real thing. We have pregnancy brain, we forget everything. So let's just do like a little role playing, okay? So like if you're pregnant out there, let's pretend, let's go back to that appointment. Okay, Bree, you're 39 weeks. We're just going to do a quick little cervical check and see where we're at. What would you say now, or how would you tell everybody to use their voice now?
And this is what I said for my second pregnancy. I said, I want the cervical check. However, I do not want my membranes swept. And said it probably at least 4 times before. Actually started saying it at my 36-week appointment because I was someone who did want the cervical checks. Mm-hmm. But I made it clear from my 36-week appointment that I did not want my membrane stripped.
Good for you. So, and did you feel like you were heard?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Good for you. I'm sorry that happened to you. So you get your membrane stripped at 39 weeks against your permission or without informed consent. And what happened?
So I head home, and all the way home, now what I realized were contractions. I started having contractions. At first, I thought it was just some cramping. I called Sabrina and vented out. I'm so upset about what happened. And then now looking back, I realized I was doing some nesting. I made 2 apple cobblers. I went out and weeded the garden. I vacuumed. At that point, I thought I was just like rage cleaning because I was so mad. And then that night at 9:00, I'm laying in bed. I roll over and my water breaks. So my husband was at work. So I call him and I let him know, and of course call Sabrina, let her know. I think all of us at the time thought we had so much time. You know, it's my first birth. Everything I've read is like, oh, we're, you know, in these early stages, and it could be hours and hours before things start to progress. So Sabrina.
I said, take your Unisom and go to bed.
Yep.
Because PROM, premature rupture of membranes, which is technically what Bree had because it wasn't full active labor. Heidi, you can disagree with me on that.
I totally agree.
If I'm wrong.
Totally agree. If you are not consistently contracting 5 minutes apart or less for 60 to 90 seconds and your water breaks, that's pretty much the first sign of true labor. That's considered PROM, premature rupture of the membranes. Yeah.
And we said, I was like, was it clear? Did it smell funky? Was anything in it? And she's like, no. And I said, are you cramping? No, I feel fine. Okay. I think we should take a Unisom or some Benadryl and go to sleep because it might kick in like 6 hours.
Yeah. So data shows that when you experience premature rupture of the membranes, contractions typically start within 6 to 8 hours, but can take up to 24 hours. And that's when the R was rupture, like rupture of the membranes. Now, every now and then we have like what we would call like a high tear, or a little bit of amniotic fluid is just kind of leaking out of you. And in those instances, sometimes it can take more like 24 to 48 hours. But that's why Sabrina suggested go to bed, because once you get into your active labor, then it's probably another 12 or 24 hours for delivery in a first-time birthing person. But birth is always unpredictable. I can see both of you guys, the audience can't see, but I can see both Bree and Sabrina's faces. So I don't know where we're going with this story. But so did you take the Unisom?
I did.
Okay.
I did. And I laid down. My husband had fortunately gone to work a little early. So he was already on his way home. So he got home, checked on me, went and ate some apple cobbler, so then he usually doesn't go to bed till much later. He was like, okay, maybe I should lay down too. So we're both in bed.
What time?
So I went directly back to bed. So I was back in bed by 9:30 after I'd made all my phone calls. He probably got in bed a little after 10.
Okay.
So, and then started kind of feeling some things, still didn't really know what it was. But at 10:30, all of a sudden things picked up quite quickly. Started having bowel movements pretty regularly, especially centered around what I know now were the contractions. So call Sabrina and just let her know, hey, things are changing a little bit, but we still think, we have plenty of time. Nothing is going wild. And of course, my husband is asleep by this point. So go back to bed. I'm laying down, but I keep having to get up to go to the bathroom. And then right about midnight, I start throwing up. And I am throwing up, especially again around these contractions. So Andrew, my husband, called Sabrina again. And at that point, I'm pretty sure you said then, Sabrina, do you want me to come? And we were both like, no, we're okay. We still have so much time. But things were picking up really rapidly. The pain was increasing. I was trying to do all the things that we had learned, but I'm still I threw up. I don't know how many times.
So do you think you were just in denial, Bree? Like why you didn't
probably
tell Sabrina to come? Okay.
Yeah. And Andrew and I are both pretty, strong, independent people. So we were like, we got this. Sabrina needs her rest. We don't want to bother her. But then around probably, I don't know, Sabrina, I can't even remember what time, maybe 1 or 2. We were like, okay, Sabrina needs to come. And I think even Sabrina could hear me in the background at one point when Andrew called her and knew it was time for her to come.
I think I didn't even ask. He called me and was like, so it is increasing and she's still throwing up. What should I do? And in the background, I hear, oh. And I said, Andrew, it's going to take me 45 minutes to get to you. I'm going to get dressed and come over now.
Yeah.
And he said, you think? And I said, professionally, yes. He goes, okay, we'll see you soon.
Okay. Good job. So that's 1 to 2 a.m. going on over there. So it's like 1 or 2 in the morning and Sabrina starts heading over. I need to go back in time though for just a minute, Bree. When this provider swept your membranes without your permission, I usually ask our clients for the acronym SPED, the station, the position, the effacement, and the dilation. Do you remember any of those numbers from besides getting swept? Do you remember that you got to check, was your cervix significantly effaced or dilated?
So if I remember correctly, I was 70%, only 1 centimeter, which I had been since 36 weeks. I'm pretty positive they didn't tell me the station. Do you remember, Sabrina?
Yeah, I think you said -2 and anterior position. So it wasn't a posterior. So when you told me all those numbers after you said he swept you, I was like, we might go into labor tonight.
Mm-hmm. So Sabrina, let's share with the audience. Can you share with the audience why anterior, why 70% effaced? What things triggered you to think this may be sooner than later?
So the cervix is amazing, and I might get a little nerdy here, but in pregnancy, it is faced and pointed towards, I call it the back door, but it's sort of towards the rectum. So if the provider is like, can you put your fists under your bottom? Then your cervix is probably posterior and they have to reach underneath the baby's head to get to it. So that means it's not at the position of the vaginal opening. And so you're less likely to have a baby in the next 24 hours if it's posterior. So the cervix has to move to the front door. It has to move to the vaginal opening. It has to shrink and efface. So if you look at your like pointer finger, and I'm demonstrating this even though you guys can't see it, but if you look at your pointer finger, if it's full, then your cervix is 0% effaced. If you bend it to your knuckle, your first knuckle to your hand is a 50% effaced cervix. If you look at like your nail bed on your pointer finger, that's like a 75% effaced cervix. And the width of your nail, like looking at it, is 100% effaced.
Like the thinness of a piece of paper, essentially. So
Yes.
they'll say paper thin at 100%.
And then it also has to open and dilate. Heidi and I don't get excited about a cervix that's like 2 to 3 centimeters dilated unless it's like 70 to 80% effaced and mid position or anterior, because so much has to change in early labor to get that cervix ready to dilate.
Yeah. So Bree, what we're saying is you had a very ripe cervix with 70% effaced in an anterior position. So like, we don't love vaginal exams, I'll be honest, right? For my clients. Bree, how's you? I got every vaginal exam. Like I said, I got my membranes accidentally swept, all the things. I'm a numbers person. I needed to know. But I was getting vaginal exams because I also understood the progression of SPED and understanding the station of the baby, the position of the baby and the position of the cervix, the effacement, the dilation. So I could know, like, even if I was still 1 centimeter dilated, but I went from 50% effaced to 80% effaced, I was like, whoa, big progress. Whereas most people hear, I'm still 1 centimeter dilated, and they think nothing's happened. And we're like, no, this is like 80% effaced is like big deal. Okay. So Sabrina is like ticking in her algorithm of like, okay, membrane swept. Okay. Water broke. Okay. She had this really thin cervix and it was anterior. Okay. So Sabrina, you start driving to the house. What are you thinking? How many hours you think till delivery?
I was also in denial because I'm pretty good at assessing like where a client is in labor. And I was like, there's just no way she can be as far along as she sounds. So I was thinking I might have a come to Jesus with her and be like, you need to suck it up. Like, I don't know if we're like this far along. And then I get a text from Andrew that said, a ton of blood just came out in the toilet. Is this normal? And in my head, I was cussing.
Well, for the audience, that is very normal for advanced stage labor. So could you walk through bloody show, Sabrina, and what normal bloody show is and what not normal bloody show is?
Yeah. Bloody show, the cervix is vascular. So as it melts away and thins, blood vessels burst and you have just blood coming down. And it's normal. It's not like your first day of your period blood. It's not like coming like dripping in the toilet typically. Some people, there is a variation of normal. Some people do have more bloody show. And recently I've had a couple people, and Heidi has too, that we've had no bloody show, and it's like messed with us because we're like, surely we're not about to have a baby. So there is a wide range of normal, but blood, if it's red and you're contracting and in labor, that's actually a sign that your cervix is progressing and things are coming along. So you're doing a great job. I always say the grosser, the closer in all things. So Bree had vomiting. She was using the bathroom often. and had bloody show. So I was like,
and
are we
those
closer?
primal guttural sounds.
Yeah. And she'd only been in labor for 3 hours.
It's crazy.
And I said, Andrew, totally normal. I am 15 minutes away. And then I updated him every 5 minutes.
Okay. So Bree, how are you at this point? Andrew's communicating for you, right? Can you walk us through what you were experiencing, like what it felt like?
So I actually gone out to our loft area and I was sitting on the couch because I couldn't lay down anymore. And we have a bathroom out there as well. So I'm just going back and forth to the bathroom. Still honestly in denial. I'm like, there's no way this is happening. I'm like, oh, early labor hurts a whole lot more than I thought it would. But, we still have so much time. We were trying to time the contractions, but I think, that's a tricky thing that Sabrina had talked to us about, but it's still when you're in the moment of trying to time a contraction, we thought it was going to start and it was going to stop and we would know exactly when. And so that was definitely a tricky thing. I think once Sabrina got there, I was realizing that this was happening. This was real. And honestly, I was starting to get a little scared because it was happening so much faster than I thought it was, or than I thought it would, I should say. So
were you
definitely
feeling
a little scary.
Pressure in your vagina, your rectum at all at this point?
Yes, but now after having 2 babies, I realized it wasn't the pressure that I thought it was, but there was definitely that stretching sensation, that pressure down there of, yes, things were happening, but not that rectal pressure that people talk about. So, but there was definitely lots of sensations.
Okay. So when Sabrina walked in and you saw her for the first time, what was that like?
I was definitely like, oh, thank God she's here. I honestly thought that things would calm down a little bit, that we would be able to, she was going to guide us through some more of the things that we had learned. We were going to do the hip squeezes and the different positioning and all these things that were going to make me feel better. So I definitely was so thankful that she was there.
Okay. So Sabrina, when you walked in and saw Bree, what was your assessment?
I need to time these contractions to see how close they are. Because she was in labor land, which means she couldn't really communicate. She was very zoned in. Her eyes were glassed over. She just looked at me and said, I can't move off the couch unless I'm running to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Partners, if you're looking at your person and they look like they're stoned, like that, like Sabrina said, the eyes glassed over, your birthing person's probably at least 5 to 7 centimeters dilated.
So that's what I thought. I was like, oh, we're 5 to 7 centimeters dilated. And I would never consider putting my hands in a woman's vagina to check her cervix. I'm not that doula.
Until you become a midwife in 5 years. Woo, woo.
True. In my scope of doula,
yes,
I never even considered that. But I don't even know if I said to Bree, are you comfortable putting your hand up there and telling me what you feel? Did I say that, Bree?
I think we talked about it, but I remember you, when I was sitting on the toilet at one point, you just looking down there. And I remember you saying, oh, so I remember us talking about it. We didn't ever do it, but I remember you looking and you were able to see something was happening.
So what I saw was perineal bulging, which as the baby comes down and your body changes and opens, your labia minora kind of comes out more. Things are a little bit more swollen. And her bloody show was dripping into the toilet, which is indicative that it's a little more than 6 centimeters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And she was still vomiting every single contraction.
Which is very transition-y, which is more 7 to 10 centimeters. So.
Which also. Yeah. And she lives an hour from the hospital.
No. Oh, God. Okay, now I'm getting scared. Okay, so algorithm running in doulas' heads, guys, right? Scope of practice, we never do cervical exams. We look at the physical signs to kind of understand. Like, typically we can hear, even just in the voice on the phone or FaceTime, and see kind of where someone may be at in their birthing process. So at this point, Sabrina's going, oh, shit.
I said, Bree, I'm just going to talk to Andrew really quick, do a couple contractions on the toilet. And we walked to the bedroom and I said, Andrew, I need you to get dressed, put the dogs away. We're going to go to the hospital. And I even said, I'm having my go bag with us, and I think I need to ride in the car with you. And he said, I agree. He is a police officer, so he's had training. But initially, I wasn't going to ride with him to the hospital because the hospital wasn't going to allow me in. I didn't know, based on her presenting symptoms, if we were going to have a baby in a car, honestly.
Wow.
So Andrew's eyes were bug-eyed. And I said, stay calm. We got this. And I said, okay, Bree, where's your clothes that you want to wear? We're going to go to the hospital. Are you okay with that? And she said, yeah. And then I helped get her dressed. And then we started doing hip squeezes. And she was like, oh my gosh, that helps so much. And it was interesting because I then showed Andrew how to do it, and Bree can tell how that happened, how that worked.
So we had done them again, like leading up to this, in our preparations or whatever. And like Sabrina said, my husband's a police officer and he definitely looks like the typical, like, big muscles, all that kind of thing. And he was trying to do this hip squeezes and I was like, go away. I need Sabrina. Like he could not do them strong enough for the relief. And I was like, I need Sabrina. Bring her back over here.
Yeah. Partners are often afraid to squeeze too hard, and we squeeze like with all of our might. I mean, I even sit on my clients' sacrums. Like they're on their hands and knees and I turn around and just sit on them because the amount of pressure you need, like our partners are too afraid to give that much pressure. So you're in the car, Bree, now on the way to the hospital, and it's like an hour drive. Did you feel intuitively like I'm close to delivery?
I definitely felt like it was coming quickly. Okay. I don't know if I had like wrapped my head around it, but I definitely was feeling like this is, it's not going to be hours from now. Like this is happening. I tried the whole, kind of sit backwards on the seat in the car. I thought that was going to be super comfortable. It was not. Just to, give you an idea, we made it to the hospital in 20 minutes. So it was definitely.
Well, your husband's a police officer. Did he put his lights on or whatever? Like, here we go.
No, we were in our regular car, but Sabrina and I were in the back seat and she was giving me hip squeezes. And I can remember still having that guttural, noise coming out. And Sabrina had said, to my husband, if I tell you to pull over, pull over. And my husband now says that he thought in his head, hell no, I'm getting us there. I know where the fire departments are. I know where the police departments are. I'm getting us somewhere to have this baby. So we get to the hospital. We get out and Sabrina and I are still kind of in the front of the hospital. And I remember leaning on this ball statue thing that they have. And I'm, contracting there and Sabrina's giving me hip squeezes. We go inside and of course they're still doing the screening process and the girl's trying to take my temperature. And I'm like, seriously, like I'm about to have this baby.
Were you pushing actively?
Not yet.
Okay.
When we got to the front desk, it was taking forever to check in. And I looked at Sabrina and I said, I feel a lot of pressure. I need to push. So we're at the front desk at that point. Okay. So that's when I was like, this is happening.
Okay.
And when she said that, in my head, I said, I need to call for the team because another doula had a client deliver the baby in the hallway of that front area, like the week before. And so I was like, I can't have her deliver. She's an employee here. So I just very gently, I said to the guy who was typing like with one finger at a time to check her in, I said, I need the delivery team. She's pushing.
Good job.
And I had 3 separate people tell me, you can go up. You can go up with her. We'll let you go with her and the dad. And I said, are you sure? Like COVID policy? So we were like, oh my gosh, I get to stay with you. That'll be amazing. And then Bree said, when she heard the code over the monitor, the speaker, she goes, that's my code. They're coding me.
Yeah. Yes, they are. So Sabrina, this back and forth is going on and eventually they're like, no, that's COVID. You can't go up. So Bree, they come with the stretcher, they get you. And then what happens?
So they tried to put me on the wrong set of elevators and we got stuck in the elevator. So I don't even know how long it was. It's such a blur in my head, but I remember being in the elevator and things started to get a whole lot more clear. So I was like, something is happening here with my body. So we get up to triage. I'm still throwing up, but they check me and they tell me I'm only a 4. Which we were like, there's no way. There's no way this is right. But yep, I was only a 4. So I had read about in books how your body can kind of go backwards. Yeah. If something happens, if you get scared, if something's unsafe. Yeah. But I was like, surely
your cervix will close, everyone. It will swell, it will regress, it will close. If we are mammals, if your body senses a threat, it's done. Your labor will stop. It will stop to protect our young. Your cervix will close. People don't think that can happen. If you don't stay primal, if you don't stay safe, if your body senses a threat, we're done. So you're in the elevator, you're stuck in your body. It's amazing that you said you get this awareness back. Because if you're starting to leave labor land and come back to like reality, your body's shutting your labor down because it doesn't feel like it's safe to have a baby.
Right.
I ran her stretcher into the wall like 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh gosh, Bree. Okay. So now you're in triage and you're 4 and you're alert now. So even more stress.
Right.
And
so after that, so at that point I still had planned on going unmedicated. But after that, my contractions just never got regular again. Never picked up. I got in the bathtub. I was able to relax some, got a few checks throughout the day, but still they never picked up. I never progressed past a 4. So at that point it's the afternoon, it's about 3:00 in the afternoon. And they say, we need to start Pitocin. And at that point, I had been having contractions for 14 hours, 16 hours, something like that. So I made the decision to get an epidural with talking to my husband, talking to Sabrina, which I 100% do not regret because the baby didn't even come until midnight. So I still had quite a bit of time.
Absolutely. What I will say is this story is crazy, but timeline spot on. So we typically say around 24 hours, right? For a first time birthing person from the time your water breaks or you go into active labor. So you ended up being on that 24-hour timeline, but you had a massive hiccup when you transferred to the hospital. You were in your deep primal mammalian self transition, all the things, and then reverse.
Yep.
So it took all that time to try to get you back to your mammalian state that you were at home. Absolutely, you got an epidural. Y'all, anyone listening to this podcast, yes, at that point, you get an epidural. You have to have an epidural at that point as a medical tool to help you not have a cesarean section.
Right.
Like
100%. So it took a while. She ended up being posterior. So pushed and pushed and pushed, which was definitely a bummer that Sabrina couldn't be there in person with me, because we both felt that if she could put her hands on me, then we could have changed some things, but wasn't the case at the moment.
Yep, spinning babies on you. Sabrina, were you coaching her virtually at this point, or Andrew virtually?
Yes, we were. Once she got the epidural, I said, sleep. All I want you to do is sleep. Let them up the Pitocin. You're not going to feel it. I need you to be able to get rest to push the baby out.
Okay.
But I was concerned that baby probably did go OP or asynclitic when her cervix regressed, because it was such a quick, back it up in there, that it probably messed physiologically with the process.
Probably when they jammed you. Yeah, when they jammed the cart and jostled. If you have a big jostle or a big jerk, that'll flip a baby in a second.
Yeah, so we were just texting. And then at 8 p.m., he said they're ready to start pushing. And I got on my iPad, they got on their iPad, and I was just next to her on the table or the bed. And then I stayed for 4.5 hours on the iPad pushing.
It was amazing, still such great help. It just wasn't what we thought it was going to be.
But what a testament right there, Bree, that even a doula virtually is still amazing help, right? So anyway, did you just look over? Could you just see Sabrina, or did you just hear her voice and know she was there telling you guys what to do?
I could see her and I could hear her talking, and she was very nicely guiding the nurses as well. Even though I pushed for 4 hours, it was still a very calm experience. It wasn't, I felt safe. It was, again, not what I thought it was going to be, but it was calm.
Yeah. So everyone, pushing phase in an unmedicated first-time birthing person is typically 30 minutes to 2 hours. Medicated, very normal for it to be 2 to 4 hours. And in an OP position, medicated, very normal to be 4 or more hours of pushing. So Bree, that's very difficult, but I want to tell you, for OP and medicated, that's kind of what it is. But did you have a vaginal birth? Are we getting?
Yep.
I was like, does this end in cesarean section? Oh my gosh. I was like, if this ends in C-section, I'm going to cry. So
no, had a vaginal birth. Everything was great. It was amazing.
Okay.
We had a baby.
Okay. Bree, that was crazy. I know my whole audience is with me right now that we're like, what? I thought you were going to have a baby in the elevator. Got stuck in the elevator. I cannot believe it was a whole nother day. That's just crazy times.
Right.
What a wild ride. Wow. Yes. Bree, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your 2 birth stories and your fertility journey. Before you drop off, what was your favorite baby product that you used?
Probably not product, but just the support. Just, like you said, having a birth class, prepare yourself ahead of time, and a lactation consultant, a birth class, having a doula, just all the things ahead of time that you can prepare yourself, unmedicated or not, just have that knowledge base so sort of know what's coming.
So one medicated, one unmedicated. I would definitely say your medicated birth was completely necessary as an intervention and a tool to help you have 2 vaginal births. So well done. Thanks for being here today, you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan and prepare for the birth you want, no matter what that looks like. Okay, I have a really amazing discount for you guys with anjahealth.com. So it's ANJAhealth.com. They are my exclusive partner for cord blood and tissue banking. If you've listened to episode 88 of the podcast, where I interview the CEO, Catherine Cross, all about cord blood and tissue banking and the 1,000 questions that I had. My child has cerebral palsy from a birth injury. I cannot go back in time. It is one of my greatest regrets. So I partner with Anja Health because I'm so passionate about cord blood and tissue banking, and I really want to teach you guys all about it. Code Birth Story gives you the biggest discount that there is available, and they are committed to Birth Story always being the biggest discount. So right now it makes your kit only $20, which essentially covers shipping. So it's $180 off with code Birth Story. So please consider cord blood and tissue banking. Look at anjahealth.com. Again, it's ANJA Health.com. And if you are going to bank your cord blood and tissue, then please use code Birth Story so you get the biggest and best discount that is available.